We found a survivor. It was Leonard. Thank God he wasn't feeling good and stayed home on the 4th, or God knows what would have happened to him. I thought we lost him, but we passed by his house and he was waiting at the signal for any sign of life or locomotion. We approached the shed, and I almost fainted like Leonard did. We were just stopping to fill Edward's tank, but we never expected to find a horribly mutated Thomas. He was horribly mutated and extremely sad, but despite those attributes, he was almost the same engine we knew and loved. He was completely dried from water, even though he was just beside the water tower. What was most unusual, though, was the fact that the turntable had been cleared of all trucks that jammed it, as Felix described previously. Maybe someone pulled them out? Thomas didn't want to talk much, but we know he was extremely grateful. After Leonard gained conscious, he marveled at the sight in front of him. After a bit of discussion, he decided to stay with Thomas until we returned up the line. We were planning to only head up to a junction and back, since that's a fairly high traffic area. We gave him an apple and a tin, which he could use as a makeshift canteen. He parted ways and headed down the line. What a day for surprises. We found a lonely Toby, waiting lonesomely at Tidmouth. He was near some empty coaches, which seemed to have been evacuated. He seemed scared and was mumbling to himself repeatedly. We approached him, but he kept reversing. Maybe this whole thing has taken a toll on him? I wouldn't be surprised. Well, it seems Toby was basically unharmed from the radiation, which is quite peculiar. Toby wasn't doing well mentally, though. He kept stammering to himself, saying things like how it wasn't his fault, how he just wants to leave himself be. I'm still unsure on what he meant by that, but he's probably just super stressed. We examined the coaches, which were the red and cream fast passenger services, that the ones that James was pulling earlier. Did you leave half his train behind? I don't recall seeing a brake coach on the train, so it might have been the case. It also explains why there was so much luggage loose on the platform. The fog had started to roll, and it's making things difficult. We decided to raid the station to see if any food was being stored within the office or something. There's got to be something good here. Everything happened at once. My hand is shaking right now. I'm barely able to write. Alright, things have calmed down, and I think I'm able to write now. I found a few pastries inside of the station, but they were pretty stale. Either way, they tasted pretty well. We wanted to ask Toby what happened to him when the blast happened. He seemed petrified, but also on the verge of tears. He had told us he had to leave Henrietta at Cloven's Gate for a few days to get replacement windows. On the day of the blast, he was supposed to pick her up. He stopped at a signal in Tidmouth and talked to James, who was shunting his coaches together. When in time for his next train. When the sirens blared and the explosion happened, James was in shock and urged people to get in the coaches. However, only half the train was coupled up. There was no time to grab the shunter's pole and hook them up. However, Toby realized that Henrietta would be in danger and did not be affected by the blast. He was about to leave when James yelled at him to push the brake coach and 2 others up the line with him to protect the passengers. Toby didn't listen. The brown box fled towards the works. James furiously pulled the coaches out of the station as fast as possible, while the tram headed straight towards the blast. The train passengers panicked as the blast shattered to their glass canopy, as shards rained down upon them, cutting their paces. Some ran for the hills, others stayed in the station. All have left by now, but it explains why the interior of the offices are completely trashed. Toby proceeded to cry, saying how he was sorry, and he just wanted Henrietta to be safe. Honestly, I was just glad he was safe. I learned that wood isn't affected by radiation, so it made logical sense he was fine. However, a voice called out from the inside of him in blue in a deep, groggy voice, which said something like, "It's all your fault, Toby. You were greedy and made them suffer." We peeked inside, and what we saw was horrifying. Toby's smoke box had become sentient, a mangled face which resembled one of a truck, with heat burns on the left side of its face. It was located right behind where Toby's would be. That was when it hit me. He wasn't mumbling to himself earlier. He was talking to the voice inside his head. After waiting around for a bit longer, we decided to head back down the line. We were not going to risk going down on the Farquhar branch line, because God knows what could be on the tracks. We also did not want to risk Toby either. Bye. base getting injured, so Edward and I conceived a plan for us to push him down the line. We also found a bit of a coal truck, so we coupled that behind us as well and started to head back down. As we left, we thought we could hear a horn of some sort, but it could have been the old air raids from a couple decades ago malfunctioning. As we traveled on, Toby was breaking down more and more, looking at how desolate the place around him was. The air was full of fog, a sky a dark gray, and no sunshine could be seen. It was like someone turned off the lights and closed the blinds on the world. Edward, being the wise sage he was, used his words to calm Toby down, and reminding him they would find Henrietta. While he was talking, and while Charlie was taking a drink from a canteen, we felt a sudden jerk as Toby applied his brakes. We stopped Edward and peered out from the side of his cab. Thomas was steaming idly in front of us with a triumphant smirk. Leonard stuck his head out of the cab, saying how good of a job he did for driving his first engine. We heard Thomas's cab door open, followed by our feet going down his ladder. Finally, the sound gravel, revealing the mysterious figure. He was rather rotund, really quite round, but we didn't see him like that. To us, he seemed to be a shining light in a deep, dark pool. Sir Bertram Topham Hatt. We decided to go back to Tim's shed since we needed a place for the rest of the night, as well as a place to ask Topham about what the hell is going on. We shunted Toby onto a siding beside the breakdown crane, which still had its arm out after freeing some trucks blocking his path. Thomas was moved beside Toby and Edward on the turntable. We took some wood we found and made a fire so the four of us could sit down and discuss what the hell was going on. Topham explained the answers to a bunch of questions we've been asking for a while. He was at Tidmouth when the blast went and was planning to board his James train when it hit. He was cut a bit at the top of his head as his top hat was blown off, followed by the shower of broken glass. The man took refuge in the office and called up the bus services to get them to rescue the passengers who hid in the station, announcing his plan afterwards to the stranded individuals in hiding. Afterwards, he snatched his hat back and quickly made his way to the parking lot, heading to the sheds. Running with such a large figure took him a while, but when he hit the sheds, it was a mess. Trucks were mangled and disfigured faces were off the trucks and jammed into the turntable. He could hear the sounds of Thomas in the shed and was shocked to see what had happened to the engine. Bertram took a moment and comforted the tank engine and told him he could help. With a whole hand car he found and decided he managed to push the crane into a position where he could free the trucks blocking the turntable and free the engine. And he released his brakes to move him to the water tower. After he heard the sound of an engine coming, he hid until the close was clear. The engine he heard was Edward, and he only found out about Leonard after spotting him near the cranes. Topham then declared that he knew this was no ordinary accident. There was someone behind this, and he had a hunch on who it was. He didn't tell us, but he did mention he had a spotty past with them. Whoever it could have been, they must really want to ruin everything he loved on this island. As we had a small bonfire, I could hear Thomas and Edward discussing who is could have been. Thomas said it could be Diesel, but Edward told him that Diesel was sent back to the mainland years ago. It was nice seeing someone Edward could talk to again. We decided to get some sleep early, since we were going to try and meet up back with Henry and the others the next day. Despite everyone's chatty mood, Toby was silent, looking extremely tense. I'll try and steam him up tomorrow morning to cheer him up.